in the service of justice and compassion towards all beings, human, animal, and sentient. That's the second part of his message. And the third part of his message is, I believe, the key to what we are going through. The third part of his message is a message of what he called engoldenment. He knew that if you surrendered totally to all of the difficulties and ordeals of the real mystical path, something utterly amazing would happen to you, just as it happened to him. You would be turned to gold and be given by grace a golden mind illumined by the most sacred and noble truths of ultimate reality, a golden heart capable of extreme love in extreme circumstances, whatever happened. And this is the miraculous thing, an increasingly golden body. Your cells themselves would be awakened to their divine truth, and your whole being, heart, mind, soul, and body, would be turned to divine human being, engoldened being, transfigured being. So now you can see perhaps why this message, I believe, is so crucial for humanity at this moment. It's crucial because Kabir faces unflinchingly the horror of where we are, the horror that we've drawn upon ourselves by our hubris, our vanity, our selfishness, our narcissism, our addiction to domination, our appalling cruelty to each other and to the animal race. He doesn't swerve from telling us the truth about that. But he tells us also a greater and ennobling truth that everyone now needs to get in direct connection with. And that is that, wrecked and ravaged by our bad choices though we are, we remain children of the light, and the light never gives up on us. And we have, as original blessing, a direct connection with that light that, if we turn to it sincerely, can do the most amazing miracles in us, and will do those amazing miracles in us in such a way that the darkest night becomes the birthing force of the most resplendent, imaginable dawn, the dawn of a new, embodied, divine humanity. This process is one that I know for myself because I have been through a very deep and very prolonged and very terrible dark night. And it ended not with my destruction and annihilation, but with an unbelievably profound and ecstatic experience of my and your divine self. And it is from that increasingly embodied divine self in myself that I turn to Kabir as the ultimate teacher now of the great transformation that you and I must all pledge ourselves to be of real help in a time in which a great many people will die, a great deal of nature will die, and humanity itself will be threatened because of the exploding crises with the profoundest paralysis and despair. The role of the real lover of God is to trust God totally, and to trust that love is working this chaos and this horror and this destruction, not to end humanity, but to end the dark addictions in humanity, so that a new, emboldened, humbled, enlightened, embodied, irradiated, golden humanity can be born out of the ashes of the old and rise like a phoenix from the smoldering funeral pyre of its old illusions and fantasies of domination and control. This is not an easy task because it requires everything. It requires the capacity to look unflinchingly into the horror and realize that there is no escape from it now, and that it will continue to work relentlessly on us to either destroy us and wipe us off the face of the earth, or transform and transfigure us. It requires that courage. And it requires another kind of courage, perhaps even more difficult for us, which is to believe so deeply in the power of miracle, that is the essential power of God, that we surrender to this process and allow it to pummel us free of ourselves, to break us so totally that we break open absolutely to grace, so that grace can do its absolutely miraculous work in us and make us far braver, far nobler, far more selfless, far more generous, far more willing to turn up and serve the impossible possible than we ever were in our lives of comfort, denial, and narcissism. So I've chosen 3 poems for you to encourage you to undertake this unbelievably amazing adventure that I and many others who are conscious of this death rebirth process, this crucifixion resurrection process, conscious because we're living it, are inviting you to. You can hide in fear if you want. You can hide in denial if you want. You can hide in ignorance if you want. You can throw up your hands and say, none of this is possible, I can't do this, if you want. All of that is entirely up to you. Or, trembling and amazed and battered and heartbroken and open, you can take a leap that you've never taken before into a faith deeper than any you have experienced before. And you can pledge yourself to simple, humble, mystical practice. And you can turn up on the streets of your country, protesting against injustice calmly and non-violently. And you can, with your resources, start giving, as Mother Teresa said, until it really hurts, until it hurts your passion for comfort and your passion for survival. You can do those things too. And that's what the noble do. That's what the lovers do. That's what the pioneers do. That's what those who love humanity enough do. And my prayer for you is that you become one of those. That you become one of those, not to suffer more, because you'll suffer terribly anyway in this process, seeing what's happening in the world. There's no way to hide from that anymore. But so that your suffering takes on an extraordinary meaning, and so that in the middle of your suffering, you'll be able to experience the joy that comes to those who love and turn up. A joy that not even Rumi or Kabir on crack can describe, but a joy that is the most real of all possible experiences on this earth, the joy that I'm speaking from to you right now. So, dear friends, it's your choice, but as you make your choice, listen to humanity's greatest poet of divine truth. And here's the first poem. Kabir refers to God as Lord, but obviously the word Lord transcends sex. The Lord himself is a guest in your heart. Why are you still so desperately seeking him? Offer your whole heart to him before night darkens it. How many eons you've waited for this momentous chance. Go near now to his heart. Offer yourself selflessly. He'll give you an ocean of ecstasy and explain to you himself love's mysteries and essence. Kabir says, how could I ever express how blessed I am to have won his unshakable love? I just want to notice three things about this astonishing poem. The first is the challenge to all of us to recognize that in our essence, we are nothing less than divine consciousness, that the creator of all of the universe is living inside the core of us as original blessing. That means that neither you nor I can any more indulge our fantasies of weakness and inadequacy, because they're simply not true. If we are God in our essence, then we have no more excuse to play small. The second is the way that he shows us in the middle of this time, a way that demands everything, but also gives everything. He says, offer yourself selflessly. Die into him. Give everything you are to the one, selflessly, without agenda, just for love's wild, holy, splendid, amazing sake. That's our job. And then the divine will do its job. And that job is very clearly stated. Offer yourself selflessly. He'll give you an ocean of ecstasy and explain to you himself love's mysteries and essence. If you risk that naked, direct relationship, and despite all your vanity and stupidity and fantasy, really abandon yourself in surrender, love itself will teach you what love is, what reality is, and guide you through the mysteries of your engoldenment. This is not poetry. This is divine truth. And now, listen to this terrible and amazing poem, which goes straight to the heart of where we are, and straight to the heart of what we need to do, you and I, to become carriers of the light, to incarnate the light, to radiate the light in the darkness. It's probably the most fearlessly austere and naked and honest mystical poem ever written. So allow it to stab you in the heart and stab your heart open. This, I've discovered, is true knowledge. Those who scramble to get into a boat sink like a stone midstream. while the shelterless and abandoned reach the other shore. Those who dare to take the hard, winding, thorny road get to town in the end, but those who stroll the easy highway get robbed or even killed soon after they set out. Everyone's wound in illusion's web, the so-called holy as much as the worldly, and those who run for safety under the comforting dais of form and ritual and dogma, well, life's hurricane lashes them. Stay out in the open. You'll be left safe and dry. The ones love never savages live in boredom and pain. Those love devours like a cannibal live in bliss forever. The ones who lose their own eyes come to see the whole creation burning in their own light. Those who hold on to their sight remain blind as bats in full noon. When I began to awaken to the truth, I saw how bizarre and crazy this world really is. Kabir is telling you and I the unspeakable, austere, and amazing truth. He's telling us all that if you try and hide from the magnificence of God under some ludicrous New Age fantasy or some religion which gives you the illusion that you're on the road to enlightenment without having to work hard for it, you are going to fail the whole meaning of your life. But if you are brave enough to go beyond dogma and ritual and religion and superstition and any confining vision of God into a naked confrontation with the absolute out in the open of your life, you will be protected with insane beauty and grace. You will survive to be tested in the ultimate way that could, if you've passed the test, enable you to live as an embodied divine being on the earth. And that test he presents with total, unflinching truth, as all the greatest mystics have presented it to us. He tells us very simply what it is. He tells us that it is nothing less than dying while in this body into life. He tells us that it is surrendering and abandoning every concept we have of what life should be or God should be, and dying through repeated surrender, through repeated trust, repeated acts of brave faith taken in the darkness of the world into the unfathomable mystery of the divine. And he tells us that if we can stay out in the open, absolutely surrendered to the wild work of God's love, and if we can repeatedly die again and again and again and again and again into deeper and deeper and more astounded and more loving and more grateful and more ecstatic life, if we can do those two things, then we will be born as the divine in the human, seeing the whole creation burning in the light of our own divine consciousness and knowing ourselves utterly liberated and free to serve and love all beings in our own body, in time, in the core of our life. That's it. That's the truth. And that's the truth you and I need to hear, because the whole of this global dark night crisis has been precisely engineered by the divine to teach us this truth. Finally, if we don't learn it, hundreds of thousands of us, people just like you and me, the humanity will die out. If hundreds of thousands of people like you and me learn it and follow it and consent to the ordeals that are necessary for us to die deeper into life, then the Great One will do the miracle of birthing a new humanity. It's our choice. It's your choice. It's my choice. Be noble now. And here is the third poem. Remember, Kabir is talking in that poem about life's hurricane lashing those who cling to illusion. If you cling to any illusion about yourself or about humanity or about the nature of God at this moment, you are going to be completely screwed. This isn't a time for illusion of any kind. Illusion about yourself, you need a hell of a lot of constant, passionate practice. So do I. Illusion about humanity, humanity needs to face the unfaceable, the unspeakable in itself. And God knows whether it's capable of that. We must try and hope by doing it ourselves. And we must face that our visions of God have been appallingly sentimental and narcissistic, because God isn't an ATM that we can draw endlessly vibrant resources from like The Secret would have had it. And God is not our servant. God is the majesty that is creating all things, and we need to fall on our knees before that majesty, and we need to recognize that it works through chaos and horror and destruction and agony just as much as it works through joy and peace and serenity and bliss. And that requires us growing up urgently. If we can grow up urgently and do the work, then grace will give us what Kabir describes in this glorious poem, which is the most glorious mystical poem of the birth of divine humanity in a person that has ever been given us. Here it is. And please listen to it in the context of the immense hurricane that you are now inescapably in. You're not going to be able to hide from the virus, even if you survive it. It will devastate millions. You're not going to be able to hide from the economic collapse. That will work its horrible magic, whatever you do. And you will not be able to hide from the collapse of the climate that will get worse if we don't rise up to do something about it, which, as you must know, is possible, but highly unlikely. So any fantasy that you may be cherishing in, and I may be cherishing in our relatively comfortable middle-class lives, is a fantasy that does not serve us at this moment. Because our task is to die into life and to risk everything on being so ennobled that we become radiators of divine joy and children of divine service and slaves of divine love, whatever the hell or heaven happens. Anyone who tells you anything different from that is lying to you. So don't listen to them, however momentary the joy or comfort they give you. They are false teachers and they will betray you. Listen to the great ones. Listen to the ones who know. Listen to Kabir. Love's hurricane has come. The whirlwind of knowledge has arrived. My thatched roof of delusion has been flung to the four directions. My hut of illusion, so carefully crafted, has come careening down. Its two posts of duality have crushed to the ground. Its rafters of desire have been split by lightning. Thunderbolts have collapsed all its eaves of greed. Its big stone jar of evil habits has smashed in a million pieces. With contemplation and clear devotion, the holy ones have rebuilt my roof. It is strong and unmoving now, and never leaks or drips. When lies and deceit ran out of my body's house, I realized the Lord in all his splendor. Rain came down in torrents. After the wild storm, torrents of divine love drenched me, body and soul. Then, O Kabir, the sun soared out, the sun of glory, the sun of realization, and darkness dissolved forever. I know that what I've been saying to you may sound intolerably severe to you. It is meant to. But as you find it intolerably severe, and Kabir is both intolerably severe and absolutely transfiguring, like truth itself, ask yourself, what in you finds this message intolerably severe? And if you really ask, if you really question yourself, you'll find out that it's the ego in you that can't stand the level of truth that's coming through this sublime prophet of truth. It's the ego that doesn't want to be transformed by such an apocalyptic situation, that either denies the situation or cries out against the situation or makes itself the theatrical victim of the situation. If you see that seriously and clearly, then you'll realize that there's something else living in you that can listen to the sublime severity of the truth. There's something else inside you that doesn't need to flee or pretend or deny anything of the severity and splendor of the truth of reality itself. And that is nothing less than your divine self, which lives in you as your deepest secret and most amazing possibility. So when you want to run, as inevitably as a human being, we all want to run, from the absolutely precise demands of a global dark night, which are die to the past so that the future can be born, die to the human fantasy of domination so that an authentic relation with the divine and the sacred in and as the whole of reality can be born. Those are the demands. And she's not going to relent with those demands, however much any of us scream, because she knows that the time for either the death of humanity or the birth of a new humanity has arrived, and that we are now in the middle of it. My prayer to you and for you is that you'll listen to the divine self within you, and that you'll do the work, the simple, humble, daily, relentless, mystical work of turning up in relationship with the divine by whatever name you know God. Because if you do, you will find that you'll be given the strength to bear the unbearable. You will be given the courage to endure what you now believe is unendurable. And you will be given the joy, the sublime ananda, the great joy, the great bliss, that death and destruction cannot touch or defeat, because it is eternal. Don't believe me, and don't even believe him. Find out for yourself right now. So that's what I wanted to say to you today, because I think all of us know that we're just at the beginning of this process. You know the virus is going to get much worse. You know the economy is going to go through convulsions. You know that the climate is going to freak out in a series of disasters that will make our behavior ever more clear to us. And you also know that the elites and the governments that are in control are profoundly corrupt. You know this. You're adults. You're not children. You're not babies. You're awake women. And you know that as awake, mature women with children and grandchildren, you've been called to what must seem like an impossible task. You've been called to be brave, unillusioned, ecstatic, honorable, sacred activist elders, standing up for compassion and justice, to model to your children and grandchildren the noble life. You know this. If you don't know this, you will know this by the time I finish speaking. You know this, though. I trust you to know this. So get on with it. We need you. I need you. All of those who turned up to do the appallingly painful and amazing work that's called on now need you. We need your resources. We need your courage. We need your nobility. We need your clarity. We need you to stop whining about the circumstances and start serving humanity. We need you to stand up in the glory of your sacred femininity and join us and be the women who the world so desperately needs now. The strong, wild, holy, unswerving women. I'm looking forward to meeting you all in that role, because I know you're capable of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, to your heart, my darling, our wish and our prayer for you today is that you carry all the gratitude that we all have at this moment for that miraculous, beautiful gem of wisdom that you have given us today.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
Andrew.
feel it.
Oh,
I feel the mother's gratitude. Those of us who've come through, survived what we've survived, to be here now for the rest of humanity, we know two things. We know that we are divine, and we know that the mother is grateful, that her work didn't kill us, but resurrected us. We know that. We do. I do. I am not despairing. I am not hopeless. I am not in any way under any illusion. I am beginning to be free, and I live in joy, and I give everything I have whenever I can to show that freedom and joy to others, because I know that those who turn up will be given that wine. I know because I turned up and was given it, so why shouldn't it be given to everyone else? So thank you. Bless you. Have a fabulous, raw, naked discussion. And what I would advise you to do, being bossy, is don't try and say anything immediately. Just take it in. Sit in silence for 5 minutes with each other. You're great friends. You're beautiful people. And allow your hearts to speak things that you may never have known you could speak. Don't try and formulate what I've tried to convey to you too soon.